On today's show, the Hawks begin their summer league journey in Las Vegas. They have some injury news, unfortunately, with regard to Kobe Bufkin. They signed a two-way contract, at least agree to one, and there's plenty to get to on today's podcast. Stay tuned. We'll have all of that and more coming up.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1764 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you deep into the night here on a Friday evening into Saturday. And I want to encourage you, as I always do on the podcast, to make us your first listen each and every day here at Locked On Hawks. Please check us out and subscribe to the show anywhere you might find podcasts. That includes Apple and Spotify and Overcast on the audio side, as well as YouTube on the video side. If you're watching this episode, go ahead and like this episode, as well as subscribing on that platform. Plenty to get to on today's podcast. Again, it's very late into the evening here on a Friday into Saturday, but alas, I am in Las Vegas covering the Hawks at Summer League. We've been jam-packed with news in recent days. I had a big news podcast on Thursday with regard to Vit Krejci and Sadiq Bey and Seth Lundy. All that is relevant right now and much more beyond that. It's been a very busy stretch on this podcast for a month plus at this point. And later on in this episode, we'll touch on Kobe Bufkin's injury, unfortunately, as he'll be sidelined for all of Summer League. We're going to do kind of the depth on that later on in the podcast, as well as a Hawks agreeing to a two-way deal with a player. The second one of those has been reported, but we will begin a little bit with the Summer League opener. It was, of course, billed as Risacher versus Sarr, number 1 versus number 2. The Hawks and the Wizards. It was the nightcap in the Thomas and Mack Center, which is the bigger arena here in Las Vegas. And it was a pretty competitive game, 94-88 in favor of Washington in the end. It was certainly a Summer League game. And if you've watched these in past years, you would know what I'm saying on that front. It was sloppy. It was fast-paced. There were some high highs, some low lows, and that's kind of what you expect. Both teams shot the ball pretty poorly in the game. There were 20 missed free throws. There were 30 turnovers in a 40-minute basketball game combined. And the Hawks led early, but for most of the game, it was a single-digit game all the way around. It was competitive to the very end. The Hawks were down by a narrow margin for a lot of the fourth quarter, but not by anything crazy. So anyway, it's something fairly clear, I should say, to Summer League veterans, I would imagine. People have observed this stuff in the past, but the scoreboard is not the most important thing in Las Vegas. Now, everybody wants to win, so I'm not saying otherwise. Guys want to win. Players, coaches, they're all trying to win. And if anything, guys are probably pressing too hard in Summer League, but it's much more about skill development and how the guys who actually matter to these teams, a la Risacher as the headliner for the Hawks, how they actually look is the most important thing in this. And through that lens, I would say it's a pretty decent night for the Hawks. Nothing crazy, but certainly probably an upbeat night on the whole. We'll come back to it more, of course, later on. But I thought Risacher in particular looked the part of what the Hawks want him to look like, which is important. He played well, I think. He wasn't incredibly dominant, but I thought he played pretty well and looked like what the Hawks want him to be. There were flashes for the other guys who mattered for the Hawks as well. And then there was Keaton Wallace. So because of the transaction cycle, I'm recording this again like 1 a.m.-ish Eastern time right now, Keaton Wallace became a topic after the game because Wallace signed, or at least agreed to, a two-way contract, according to reporting from Woj, and I heard the same, so that's kind of been out there. The Hawks not announced that just yet, so keep that in mind. It's not official, but Wallace is not a name that a lot of people know necessarily unless you're a sicko, which I know a lot of the listeners are, and I definitely appreciate that. But Wallace spent last season with College Park with the Skyhawks, played 16 games there, averaged pretty decent numbers, 13 points, 6 assists per game, a really good aggressive defensive player at 6'3", 6'4" in the backcourt, executes very well. Good athlete, played college at UTSA for 4 years, was actually all conference 3 times at the college level, very productive player, was undrafted, but was briefly on a two-way contract with the Clippers about a year ago, for instance. So I think he's a guy that has more pedigree than you might expect for a guy who was just in the G League last season. He also is known to a lot of people as being Keaton Wallace's brother. So the lottery pick from last year ended up in Oklahoma City. We talked about him a lot as a potential Hawks target a year ago. He is the brother of Keaton Wallace. So he's 25 years old. Again, listed at 6'3", 185 on the Hawks roster for Summer League. Kind of a combo guard, but played some point guard tonight in particular. The Hawks were, at least from what I heard, efforting on this front before tonight. But of course, this news broke within the first hour after the game. So obviously he impressed them enough in this game to kind of cement that potentially. And I heard for a while that not only Wallace, but they were trying to find a guard for one of the two-way spots. There's some advantage to having 3 two-way slots now. And one of those is going to be Seth Lundy. But the Hawks are kind of short on guard play in the deeper bench area right now. And while Wallace is not going to change your life necessarily, he does defend, which is important. And the guys in College Park play a certain way and play the right way, what the Hawks want to play. He executes very well. That was on display even tonight in the game. He's also a pretty decent shooter. So Wallace is about 38% or so, 30% or so from three-point range in the G League, over a decent sample size. Good free throw shooter as well, about 80% dating back to college. So the stroke looks pretty good. Again, not like a total sniper, but a guy who can, in theory, shoot, defend, play make a little bit, pass a little bit. Like, I think that I like Keaton Wallace more than the average person would. I value what he does as kind of the little things as a defensive player, but good motor. Everybody seems to like the guy, and I think I'm not surprised by this. Again, it's not like a huge splashy name out there, but that's kind of was what I was expecting the Hawks to do with one of those two-way spots, was to probably sign somebody in this realm. And it doesn't have to be off of the Summer League roster, but Wallace kind of being the name there, not a huge shock to me. And we'll leave it there for now. So we'll talk about him more when we get into the game, and also kind of later on in the week, because he's playing on the Summer League team. But another guy now who is more formally tied to the roster to go along with Risacher, to go along with Gay, to go along with Jurisic. EJ Liddell's on this team as a full guaranteed contract. And then even guys who've been on two-way contracts like Miles Norris, Dylan Windler, who Windler can't sign two-way now, but there are 7 guys on this team that are like actually tied to the Hawks pretty formally. And now you can add Wallace to that list beyond the G League. Okay, with that out of the way, we'll dive a little bit more into what actually transpired in the game this evening. And we'll start with the first half, because that's where a lot of things kind of like soak in. There were some questions that I got about why the Hawks did what they did with the starting lineup. As we'll get into later on, Kobe Bufkin was unavailable and will not be available the entire way with a shoulder injury. Obviously, that was not well timed. The Hawks were planning on having Kobe be the kind of floor general. I did a podcast with Cliff Willis earlier this week, actually. We talked about Kobe extensively as kind of like the table setter, veteran coming back as far as Summer League is concerned, and a great opportunity for him and the team to play with him. All of that went out the window on Tuesday night. So that left the Hawks a little bit short. They do have guard play, as I mentioned before, Keaton Wallace, even Jarkel Joyner. They have guys who have played in the College Park system, but they started without a point guard in this game. It was Jurisic and Risacher in the backcourt. And while Jurisic can certainly play on the ball, he's not a point guard, traditionally, I would say. And that was kind of evident. Like in the first few minutes of the game, it actually worked pretty well. But then once Washington kind of started to press up a little bit on defense with their smaller attacking guards, the offense kind of sputtered out a little bit for the Hawks at times without someone to get them into their sets with the starters. Risacher, by the way, was defending Bub Carrington, who's a first-round pick lead guard of the Wizards, and he was very good in this game. 19 points, 9 rebounds, 8 assists for Washington. We'll be covering him, but I certainly like him quite a bit, and that was a nice test for Risacher out of the gate. He had a nice left-handed drive and finish in the first few minutes, did Risacher. Also buried a corner three after a nice skip pass from Jurisic in the first few minutes as well. The biggest highlight of the game might have been the Risacher dunk with his left hand. But other than that, Jurisic had this huge dunk in traffic in the first 4 minutes of the game, in which it was his first shot attempt in a Hawks uniform. He made it count. It wasn't necessarily on Alex Sarr, but he was in the vicinity, let's say. He was kind of late rotating. Definitely got a lot of attention for that play, did Jurisic. I will say he was not particularly good after that, I didn't think, but certainly showed some aggressiveness, and that's kind of the theme that I talked about on draft night, for better or for worse. It's not always for better, but Jurisic is not afraid. He is willing and able to go at you, and he did that a little bit in this game. Mo Gay, a little bit spotty. We'll get into that in a second, but he actually missed a three pretty badly. He had a nice verticality play in the first quarter, I thought, but yeah, it was generally sloppy. In the first quarter, the Hawks shot 30% from the field and actually led by 9 points because Washington was even worse than that. Rotationally, this is interesting to me. Only 9 guys played for the Hawks, and actually for the Wizards as well. I watched a lot of Summer League basketball in my life over several years, including today before the Hawks played the nightcap. Most teams are playing more than 9 guys. So it's not unprecedented by any means, and obviously remember that Kobe was supposed to play, which is part of this. But 9 guys played, and it was the same rotation in both halves. It was Risacher, Jurisic, and Gay staying on through the first time out in the first quarter. Then it was Wallace and Miles Norris coming in. Risacher played the most of anyone on the Hawks roster, 29 minutes, along with Windler, who's more of a veteran type. Joyner and Liddell came in after that, and then Windler came back in for Risacher when he finally sat. I know that the Hawks started Rob Baker at center, 6'10", kind of floor spacing shooter who played some in College Park last year. He was not particularly effective in this game. And on the bench, Miles Norris is bigger than EJ Liddell lengthwise, but Liddell basically played center on defense, it looked like, from the way the Hawks were scheming things up. And Liddell is, late arriving. Keep that in mind. Like, he just got to the Hawks organization like about a week ago at this point, so probably was not quite up to speed on everything the way that a lot of the other guys are. Something that Ronald Norwood even said tonight, who's the summer league coach for the Hawks, is that a lot of these guys have played together or played in the system before, and Liddell is not one of them. So along with basically, it's of the guys who played tonight, Liddell and the rookies are the only guys who do not know the system already. So keep that in mind as sort of a grading curve for all of those guys. But anyway, that was the rotation. That was kind of the first half. There was a pretty hard fall by Mo Gay. We can sort of talk about, but Mo had 4 fouls and 7 shots in his first 10 minutes of action. So it was pretty up and down, we'll say. Anyway, we'll leave it there for now. We'll come back in a second and talk more about the second half of this game, as well as my overall takeaways from each and every of the key players, I should say, on the Hawks roster. At the end of the show, we'll also get into Bufkin's injury, kind of the fallout of that, what it all means, etc. Before we get to all of that stuff, a word from our partners on today's podcast. Today's show is brought to you by eBay Motors, and passion, drive, and patience are the formula for winning championships. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. At eBay Motors, they have everything you need to maintain your vehicle and also level it up to peak performance. They have superchargers, they have roof racks, they have exhaust kits, LED headlights, whatever you're thinking of. And I really mean anything for your car. They're going to have it for you at eBay Motors, whether it's actually speed or power or style you're looking for. They have you covered across the board. They have over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find what you're looking for, exactly what you're looking for when it comes to eBay Motors. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your parts also guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you are burning rubber, but you are crucially not burning any cash. With all the parts that you need at the prices that you're looking for, it is much easier to turn your car into the MVP that you're looking for and bring home that win that everybody is seeking. I know that I'm always looking for with my vehicle. That's the case at eBay Motors. And keep your ride or die alive right now at ebaymotors.com. One more time, the place to go is ebaymotors.com. That's ebaymotors.com. eBay guarantee fits all available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. All right, some more quick notes here, and then we'll kind of get into the player stuff in a second. I thought that, Mo Gay had one of the themes of the game was that Mo Gay kept falling down and, drawing charges and crashing in, and it was a interesting game for Mo Gay in general. But the big takeaway, he was asked by, I think, everybody multiple times, but especially Lauren Williams of the AJC after the game. And basically, he's okay. But lots of hard falls, and Ronald Norwood laughed about it, but he seems to be fine despite landing pretty hard on his back at one point, which is kind of a worry area for Mo in the past. Jurisic's next 2 shots after his first big dunk were both air balls. One of them was a bad miss. The other one was just kind of not really his fault, kind of a flaming bag, end of the shot clock kind of thing there. But I thought Risacher had some encouraging ball handling moments, some good passing moments. The feel there is very evident. He had this one behind the back pass that kind of made the rounds a little bit after a nice dribble move. The Hawks were up by as many as 13 points in the first quarter or plus of this game, and that kind of evaporated, and from there it was pretty rough. The Hawks did, though, take a lot of threes in this game, 39 of them in a 40-minute game. That's a good pace. I know that Quinn is certainly itching to have that happen in the future. At the end, they kind of closed with Wallace, Jurisic, Risacher, Windler, and Gay. So the only change there was that they kind of went a little bit smaller with Gay playing center and Wallace on the court. A couple good looks late from Risacher from 3-point range late in the game. He made one of them in the fourth quarter, in crunch time. But Jurisic kind of struggled a little bit. There was one big three that, again, Risacher made to get it within 2. Mo Gay, though, got lost in a switch against Bob Carrington. That did not go very well for him. There was a challenge late in this one. There was a bad foul, actually a bad sequence from Washington, where Johnny Davis, former lottery pick, took an awful 3 for the Wizards, and then they actually fouled Jurisic on a 3, which was helpful for the Hawks to get back in the game, but it was not quite enough, and we'll kind of leave it there at the end. As far as the players are concerned, we will start with Risacher, who I thought, again, played very well. I mentioned that before, but 18 points on 4 of 7 from 2, 3 of 9 from 3. Got to the line only once, was 1 of 2. 5 rebounds, 2 assists. I think his passing was better than 2 assists would indicate. I think he moved the ball very well in this game. Some things you'll notice if you don't already watch him or haven't watched him in the past. He's not your traditional number 1 overall pick that's going to just break you down off the dribble. He doesn't really go by guys right now. That's a question that he has that he's going to have to answer in the future, is the ability to kind of get by the first level of the defense and finish. Both those things. But the shooting played up in this game. 9 3-point attempts. Only made 3. That's totally fine. That's a good ratio. Getting them up. I think he's encouraging himself to shoot them. They're telling him to shoot, kind of bomb away. I think, again, the feel is the biggest thing for me. The passing, the way he handled the ball. Again, not blowing by guys, but like the ball's on a string for him, which is in a good way. He makes the little things happen as well. Defensively, he didn't like the way he played. He actually answered a question from John Hollinger of The Athletic about his defense. Like, he didn't seem the way he liked the way he played defensively. He wasn't perfect, but I thought he played reasonably well for a guy playing his first professional game in this setting anyway. So I think you saw what you needed to see from Risacher in this game. Now, I'm sure that people that were scouting off the box score or whatever might not be overly impressed, but he did have 18 points. Like, there was that aspect, but if you watch it, again, I've said this before, it's not a knock on him. He does not have the profile of a traditional number one overall pick, but in the modern NBA, a guy who is 6'9", 6'10", who can shoot it and has good feel, good passing, decent enough ball handler, defensively, all that stuff. I like what I saw in general. It's one game. I would say this either way. Like, if the Hawks, if he had struggled, I'd tell you, and I would also say it's one game. If he had been incredible, I would tell you it's one game. It was one game. I thought he played pretty well. And I think you wanted to see, you saw what you needed to see from Risacher through one game, even if it's one game. Elsewhere, Moguet, I mentioned before, had kind of a rough one. He had 7 fouls in 27 minutes. And how you have 7 fouls? Well, it's actually 10. You're allowed in Summer League. But Mo had lots of highs. He got to the line 13 times. So he was crashing toward the rim, which Norad praised him for post-game. I agree with that. He was aggressive in a good way. He also took a bunch of settled jump shots I didn't love, but he was 4 of 9 on 2s, 0 of 4 from 3, 4 rebounds, did have 3 steals and a block. The 7 fouls are pretty funny. It was not his best work, but Moguet is certainly a fan favorite for a reason. The talent there is very evident. If he does some eye-popping things, it's never surprising. But I thought he was not great, but also wasn't awful, just kind of maybe overly aggressive. Needed to slow down a beat. I think he might, as the week goes along, kind of get a little bit more settled in. And he even mentioned, it's worth noting, he didn't play a lot last year just because of the injuries. So he just said it's going to be playing, which it's a good thing to not forget. He hasn't played a lot of basketball since he was drafted. So notable there. Other guys who are key players. Dylan Windler hit 4 threes and had 8 rebounds. That's kind of his normal experience. As a reminder, I'll probably say this a lot. He cannot sign a 2-way contract. I know he finished the year on a 2-way for the Hawks last year, but he's not eligible. He actually has had too many years of service. So if he's going to be around somewhere in Atlanta, it'll be on a full deal. And right now, they don't have a roster spot for him. So keep an eye on that. But I thought he's an NBA player. It's very clear, but nothing like eye-popping. Risacher. So 7 points, 2 rebounds, 2 assists for him. Only took 6 shots in 26 minutes. They get to the line 7 times. Actually shot 3 of 7 at the line. You don't love that necessarily. Did have a block and a steal. Aggressive to a fault, and not in a bad way, but not necessarily a point guard. He was put in that position. I didn't love that, but it's good kind of development for him. I thought he was not the best. In fact, they were probably better without him on the court for a large portion of this game. Does that matter? No, they're not trying to win. I mean, they are trying to win, but that's not the priority of the game. So I thought, obviously, the dunk will be remembered. He didn't play very well after that, but there's no shame in that either. Like, he's obviously still a young guy too. So I think you saw the flashes there, but he is a little bit over aggressive. The jump shot's kind of a question, and we'll see what happens from there. But defensively, he was getting into guys, which you certainly like. Rotationally, though, off the ball, less impressive, better on ball than off, and room to maneuver from there. Elsewhere, Rob Baker, 2-9 from the floor, 7 points. We'll leave that. Miles Norris, 9 points, 3 blocks, 4 rebounds. I know my friend Glenn Willis, who has been on the show many times, is a huge Miles Norris enthusiast after tonight and including tonight. He was doing all the little things well. He was on a 2-way last year, if you don't know his work, and then the Hawks had to waive him, but they kept him in College Park. I like Miles Norris too. He's a good, solid role player. I don't know if he's going to be anything more than that, but certainly a guy who played well off the bench in this game. Liddell, 4 points, 5 rebounds, had 2 assists. He was good organizing, but certainly not up to speed just yet. The one bucket he had was actually a nice offensive rebound, but he was 0 of 3 from 3 in the game. Jarkel Joyner had good energy defensively, and then Keaton Wallace, 10 points, 6 assists, 4 rebounds, 2 steals. He was really good in this game, and I'm not saying that's the reason why he got a 2-way. They're not giving him a 2-way off of one game, but certainly they've already liked him for a while, and it certainly did not hurt him. And he was quite good in this setting for the Hawks. And 9 guys played. Maybe we'll see more of the other guys, but what I'll tell you is this: without Kobe, who is of course hurt, the guys who played in the game tonight were the guys who would play if the Hawks were. If all that mattered was this roster exactly trying to win a basketball game, they would have played these 9 guys. Respect to all the guys who are on the team to fill out the depth, but the guys who played tonight, with the exception of maybe Jarkel Joyner, are all, and maybe Rob Baker. I get that those guys are more fringy, but they're College Park guys who played well last year for College Park. And the other 7 guys, and I'm including Norris there, I'm including Wallace there, Liddell, Windler, they're all like NBA adjacent kind of players. So the Hawks have a decent enough roster. They didn't win this game, but no shame in that. Anyway, we'll leave it there for now. But it was very summer leaguey. Nobody shot well. In fact, I don't think anybody on the Hawks. Yeah, the only guy on the Hawks roster that nobody did shot 50% or better. 2 guys off the bench, Wallace and Norris, 50%. And Risacher was okay too, but only Windler shot the ball well from 3, 4 of 9. So like it was uneven, but it was a summer league game, and more to come on that on Sunday. Okay, we will close the show with some Kobe Bufkin talk. Unfortunately, for all parties involved, there we'll kind of preview at least a little bit the game on Sunday evening. But first, over from our partners on today's podcast. Today's show is brought to you by BetterHelp, and I think on some level we all compare our lives to people around us. As they say, though, comparison is the thief of joy, and while it might look like people have it together on Instagram or whatever social media network that you're looking for, the reality is they probably don't have it all together. Therapy is helpful for everybody and actually help you to focus on what you are looking for, what you want, instead of what others happen to have or what they look like they might have. That lets you to start living your best life. You can learn positive coping skills, how to set better boundaries at BetterHelp. I know I have my stresses as well when it comes to work and future stuff, etc. We all have those things, but we can all benefit as well from getting things off of our chest. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try right now. It's entirely online, and BetterHelp is designed to be convenient and flexible for your schedule. It's even suited to your schedule. Again, huge for me and others if you're navigating time crunches in your life. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and then you can get to switch therapists if you want to at any time for no additional charge. Stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp. Again, stop comparing and start focusing with the folks at BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month with BetterHelp. One more time, the place to go is BetterHelp. That's BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, we'll get out of here now with some Kobe Bufkin talk, unfortunately. And I've toyed with doing an emergency podcast on Thursday, I should say, but it wasn't quite that to be its own standalone show, unfortunately. Or I guess because it wasn't such a big deal long term, it wasn't worth doing that show. But Kobe Bufkin, as I sort of teased out earlier, is going to be out for all of Summer League. He injured his right shoulder during Tuesday's practice for Summer League before the Hawks left Atlanta. And an MRI, quote, revealed findings consistent with a right shoulder subluxation. So that's the assumption, is a right shoulder subluxation for Kobe Bufkin. He's been ruled out already for Summer League. He'll be ready for training camp, according to what the Hawks have said. And Rowland of Hawks Summer League coaching fame praised Kobe post-game tonight for coming on the trip because they didn't make him come because he wasn't going to be able to play. But notable to me that he was able to come, notable to Rowland as well. Like he's kind of showing leadership according to what he said in the locker room, using his voice, etc. By the way, while we're here, Bufkin and Lundy were also around the team on the bench tonight, and they had some good support courtside. Jalen Johnson was there, Okongwu was there, Krejci, the newly signed Krejci was there, Garrison Matthews with an incredible throwback Pat Riley haircut for Garrison Matthews, which was fun to see courtside. But anyway, Bufkin got praised for that, but he's been around the team. He's not going to be able to play though. But I got lots of questions about this. So look, I don't know the severity. The fact that they were able to say already he's going to be back for camp is a good thing. It doesn't seem like it's hugely serious, but because he's had injuries already in his first 2 seasons, people were kind of wondering aloud about this. So it's nothing chronic on his injuries, which is a good thing. He had the freak injury last year. He kind of broke his thumb early in the season. Then he had a toe sprain, and now this. So nothing recurring, nothing terribly terrifying, I should say. At the same time, people were throwing around the injury-plagued label or whatever, injury-prone label. I get why that's happening, but I'd be more wary of saying that. I would not go to that point already at this point in time after 2 years and 3 smaller injuries. But it isn't great, of course, that he has another issue here. And the summer between your first year and your second year in the NBA is always one that's big for development. So obviously he's been playing basketball for the last 3 months, but Summer League is the one public event that people kind of see you at. So there's that. I would stress, though, most of the development in the summer does not happen in a Summer League game. It happens in workouts and individual work, which he's already been doing for the last 3 months. So keep that in mind. But so far, injuries have been a big theme for the Hawks draft class from last year, a year ago. Bufkin's played 31 games overall, 17 games in the NBA, 14 in the G League, missed all that time last year. Mogay played only 10 games overall, which I sort of teased about that earlier on this podcast, but only 6 in the NBA, 4 in the G League. He probably had the most concerning injury of all of them with the the stress fracture in his back that actually cost him several months. You don't ever want that for anyone, much less a big. But Bo seems to be back and ready to go now, but still has not played a lot of basketball. Seth Lundy was the healthiest of the three, 34 games last year, and obviously he just had some of those were like DNPs for the Hawks, but he's hurt right now, had the ankle surgery on May 1st. So I get it. Like, it isn't great. I know we'd all like to be watching Kobe Bufkin. I know the Hawks would like to see him play right now along with the other guys because, as I talked about with Glenn, it just helps to have the guy that you trust at point guard to make everybody else look better. Plus, Kobe is just a good player, a good prospect. But anyway, I'm not worried about this long term. If there's something that the Hawks are not saying right now, if he misses time in camp, then it becomes concerning. But for now, it's more of an unfortunate thing, the timing of this and being able to miss Summer League. But if he's ready to go in October, it's going to be minimized as far as the impact is concerned for me. Okay, we'll get out of here now. I'll just say this. The next Hawks game is on a Sunday evening. It's an 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern time schedule start. So 5 o'clock local here in Vegas, 8 p.m. Eastern against the Spurs on ESPN2. Obviously, lots of connections there. The DeJounte trade, the Hawks owe the picks to the Spurs. Quinn and Landry have Spurs ties as well. Only one big-name prospect on the Spurs roster. It's Steph Castle, the 4th overall pick out of UConn. That'll be interesting to see him go against Risacher and Jurisic, etc. But also some other guys there on their roster that are interesting, like rookie Harrison Ingram's a guy I like as a potential rotation forward in the future. But yeah, that's the next one on the agenda. And then the Hawks actually have 2 days off, Monday and Tuesday, before they actually face off with Dalton Connect, Bronny James, and the Lakers on Wednesday. But anyway, full coverage between now and then. I doubt I do a podcast on Saturday unless there's actually big news that happens, like a transaction of some sort. But if that happens, I'll jump into action as fast as possible, as always. But in the meantime, I'll be back after the game on Sunday from Las Vegas. Please subscribe to this podcast anywhere you might find podcasts. That includes Apple and Spotify, as well as Overcast. And again, anywhere you might find audio podcasts. Plus, leave ratings and reviews on those platforms and tell your friends. And if you're following on YouTube, go ahead and like this episode right now. Do me a favor and go ahead and do that right now. Plus, subscribe and leave the notifications on for when I drop a new episode. You will have it in your feeds at that point in time. Please follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Hawks. Follow me on Twitter at BT Rowland. Also, follow my written work at patreon.com/BT Rowland. I appreciate all the support as always. We'll see you next time.